Okay, everybody, let's take it from the top.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Hi, hello everybody, and welcome back to D Plus Us, the show about all things Disney. I'm one of your hosts, Griffin and Griffy D-Pad, and with me as always is the wonderful, the amazing Mr. Mitch George. How are you doing?
This movie isn't bad. It just does bad things sometimes.
This movie is bad.
Okay.
It'll
be a good one.
I'm so
I already
angry
know
about
it.
This movie.
I am not, so it's going to be fun.
This movie's not entirely bad. I just am angry about some very specific things about this movie that we will be getting into on today's episode, folks, as we are talking today about Lilo and Stitch, the live-action remake coming out today, or not today, but coming out a few days ago this year, the 2025 remake of the fantastic 2002 animated movie, as well as references to the series and the other movies and all of that. A surprising amount of references to not the original movie in this movie
Series. Yeah, like you get that one shot on Jumba's ship. I'm like, oh, that was unexpected.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see 627. Which let's just spoil shit immediately.
Or 625.
We're spoiling shit all right off the bat.
It's Lilo and Stitch. You know, Lilo and Stitch is more Lilo and Stitch. It's just
it is, but it
fuzzier.
Isn't. Of course, folks, we are going to go through everything. We're going to talk about this movie spoiler-free for the most part. At the front, sorry for the one spoiler off the bat. And then we'll jump into full spoilers and story and whatnot. But before that, a quick rigmarole. First off, hi, hello, thank you for listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, head on over to the podcast version if you want that. Or if you're heading on a podcast version, check out the wonderful video version. We got a new series that I'm working on in particular. I wish Mitch was here to work on it with me. But alas,
I do and I don't because Florida.
Yeah.
So
we'll do an episode eventually. But there is a short series where I'm doing right now of exploring things in the parks as a brand new pass holder. You can find that on YouTube for the YouTube Shorts version, or you can also find that on TikTok. I will be taking recommendations on TikTok, so that's kind of probably the best place to go for that. But I highly recommend it. It's fun. It's an interesting time, and it gets me into the parks. So
and if like me, you don't like using TikTok because you're over the age of 30, you can also find them on YouTube as YouTube Shorts.
Yes. And I have some suggestions, even a suggestion from Mitch that I'm going to take at some point. So now it's just thinking about what have we talked about in the parks recently.
As long as it's drinking around the world and ends with drunk Griffin, we're good to go.
It's not that, because I will not do that on camera.
It is a question of whether Canada or Mexico is where you start. That is very controversial, and we will talk about that later.
Mexico.
That could be a whole dang video. Save it.
It's just Mexico
Context.
because I follow liquor before beer.
Yeah, beer before liquor, never sicker.
Anyways, that's not the point. Yeah, go check that out. There's a couple episodes up now. There's going to be more coming. Trying to do it about once a week, give or take. Unfortunately, that means going to the parks a lot, which means driving down there and spending money down there. But
You don't have to spend money. You've already bought your annual pass. You've got parking.
yeah, but here's
You
the
can
thing.
go and spend $0, Griffin.
Here's the thing that no, it's not that. It's not the parks that's spending money. Here's the thing that upsets me is that so many roads in Florida are toll roads.
Can you not get okay, here's the thing. Toll roads in the US are one thing. But each time you take the toll, it's $1.50. That's nothing.
Yeah, one way. So it's typically about $3 both ways.
Okay. Have I talked to you at all about the toll highway that we have here that the government sold to a private company on a 100-year lease?
No, but that sounds very shitty.
I want to take it 20 kilometers, let's say. It's like a $30 trip.
Oh, that's a BS.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like. Not like.
Anyways, go check out that stuff. Fuck toll roads. And
you can get a pass. You'll be fine.
I have one, and it's still stupid. Anyways, we're talking today about Lilo and
Take
Stitch.
the bus. I don't know what to tell you.
Directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, who you might know from his directorial movie back in 2021, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, which is fantastic, and everyone should see that.
Still haven't watched that.
But also just kind of interesting, he's currently working on a refresh of the Jetsons.
Oh. Live action?
I think animated.
Good.
I hope animated. I don't know.
Me too. Because we're getting live action Jetsons. It's called Fantastic Four.
I didn't honestly know that this was a thing until I brought him up to talk about for this episode. But yeah, directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, screenplay by Chris. Gonna butcher names for that. I'm sorry, but Chris Kakino Neokalani Bright and Michael Van Wise. Starring Cindy Elizabeth Agudong, Billy Magnuson, Hannah Waddingham, Chris Sanders, Courtney B. Vance, Zach Galifianakis, and Maya Kealoha. Runtime of 108 minutes, a budget of $100 million.
148 minutes. Oh, no, 108 minutes. Yeah, sorry, hour 48.
Hour 48.
Yeah.
And current box office just absolutely skyrocketing right now with $341.7 million. And a shocking twist, everybody. One of the most popular Disney franchises is making a lot of money.
What's interesting too about this is there are a number of articles trying to track how it did so well, because it was originally, it was tracking towards a $120 to $165 million opening. What blew it away is millennials and Gen Z. So younger millennials and Gen Z who grew up with this film are going back to the theaters for this, and it's been really difficult for studios to get that audience specifically to go back to the theaters post-COVID. So that's where you're seeing it blow up.
Oh yeah, and it's not surprising, right? Like it's Stitch we're talking about here. Like Stitch is
cultural icon at this point. Yeah,
like Stitch is the icon from the early 2000s for Disney. It is not surprising that this movie is doing incredibly well. It's not surprising that people are going out in droves to see this movie. Like I get the chance now to see these movies at Disney Springs, and that theater was packed both before the movie, after the movie, and the theater itself. All of these people going there to see Lilo and Stitch. Like, it is not surprising at all that this movie is doing so well.
It's also not a Disney thing exclusively, right? Like my local theater, we tend not to, movies like this we have to see with a general audience because we tend to go to a smaller 19 plus theater here in the city of Toronto. But with this one going to a regular theater, we went to buy tickets like 2 hours before the movie. The theater was sold out. Like we got two of probably like 6 or 7 tickets that were left. It was insane. I have not seen a theater this full since COVID. And that was 5 years ago. Also, how was that 5 years ago?
Yeah, the last movie I saw that was this full was honestly Thunderbolts, but that was just in the theater. That wasn't the same fervor around it outside.
Even my showing of Thunderbolts wasn't this busy.
Honestly, I think my Thunderbolts showing was as busy as it was just because it was Disney Springs.
Potentially, yeah.
That said, this movie has a lot of changes from the original. I think it's hard to find a balance for these live-action remakes, right? For that you have some situations like the upcoming How to Train Your Dragon remake that is supposed to be a shot-for-shot remake.
Which it looks to be that way from all of the marketing we've gotten on that. That's out in a couple of weeks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Looking to getting tickets for that at some point.
Or then you have other examples like Cruella, which is a fully original story that uses the same characters. And it's hard to find a balance there. I typically lean, though, towards like the movies that do their own thing. I think especially when you look at the Disney live-action remakes, like my favorites are like Cruella or Pete's Dragon that are very, very different from their originals.
I wouldn't even call those remakes, to be honest. It's a different telling of the same. Like Cruella especially is just a reimagining of the character. It does not feel at all like a remake of a film, whereas Pete's Dragon, it uses the same name, but it's a very different movie. When I'm looking at this, I'm looking at Aladdin, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast.
And even those I think have had a good smattering, right? Where like Cinderella is a remake through and through. But yeah, Aladdin
with a little more exposition, similar to what we get here, flushing the story out from the original runtime of like 120, 130 minutes.
We'll get to this one. Aladdin though is it hits the same beats, but is very different. Especially with
Jasmine.
With Jasmine, but also with how they use Genie.
Yeah.
Lilo and Stitch for me feels like it's trying to find that middle ground, but fails. I think that you can tell they wanted to do something different with Lilo and Stitch here, but they knew that they couldn't change too much. And so the stuff they did change just doesn't work for me. This is one of those that I think needed to be either a shot-for-shot remake or so incredibly different that it is its own thing.
See, it worked for me here, just thinking about this film standing on its own, not looking at it as a remake, just going into this movie knowing it's not going to be exactly what I grew up with. Because, I mean, for context, this film came out when I was 10. My sister was 8. We were in the prime range of like, we're buying, shut up. We were in the prime age of buying all the toys, going to McDonald's for the Happy Meal, watching the show, watching the direct-to-DVD sequels. We are the audience for this. My sister is obsessed with Stitch. Our son has like 3 or 4 Stitch toys, and he's like 6 months old. And they're all from my sister. She bought him an outfit. It's Stitch themed because it is, like we said earlier, it's a cultural icon at this point, especially for my generation, I think, as well, skewing a little younger into the Gen Z. So for me, it was, what are they going to do with these characters, this story, this setting? And there was enough there for me to enjoy my time with it. I got really emotional at the end. Well, the other thing that got me here, and I don't want to get too spoilery right now, but they flush out enough of the story around their parents and around the relationship between Nani and Lilo, and just the struggles that Nani has, and ultimately where the film ends up, that hit me in a way that the original film never did, which I thought was a really nice differentiator from the original film, where that felt like everyone's got a happy ending and we're setting up all of these like spin-offs and sequels and all this stuff because Disney is a marketing machine. This just felt like a really human story, which was fun with the juxtaposition of the aliens that they tried to just spatter throughout.
Yeah, I think for me, this movie is fun in certain places. I think seeing Lilo in the Stitch just kind of get up to mayhem is very fun. I think the casting of this movie, for the most part, is really good. I like 90% of the casting of this movie. Maya Kealoha as Lilo is great. This kid is awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing.
And then
so good. I mean, the amount of ADR used is very evident, but it still works.
Yeah. And then Sydney Agodong as Nani, I do think she's a fantastic casting for this. That said,
her casting here for me felt like the elevation that Naomi Scott brought to the role of Jasmine in the Aladdin remake.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for me, when it comes down to it, though, is I like some of the story decisions they made here. I liked seeing more of, Nani struggling with it and it falling back to some things. But ultimately, what it falls down to is I think they made too many key changes to too many key things that are at the heart of Lilo and Stitch, both the original film, but also the series, the sequels, the entirety of the franchise. And even more than that, they've just, very frankly, to me, felt insulting to it. Like, it genuinely changes so much to me with how they end this movie to be both like, it frustrates me, and then talking with some of my friends who love this movie growing up and are also native Hawaiian people, where it's like, hey, there's a lot of other stuff in here about why the original movie was so good and why this one just doesn't hit. I'm not going to speak on it because look at me. I am a white guy. I am not the one to be speaking on that shit. I am very much not. But it's a very interesting added aspect to this of, I think that the changes they've made are just not good.
I don't agree with that entirely. I do think there is some things that are added here that help with reinforcing some of the core theming around Polynesian culture. And obviously I can't speak to that either. So I'm sure there's a lot that I missed from the original film as a kid that felt representative to folks. So I can't speak to that. But there was a lot around island culture, family, and some of these things. Some of the idea of, okay, that's going to get a little too spoilery. Some of the things that Nani needs to deal with felt very real and very grounded in the current geopolitical climate.
That was the part that I liked.
Yeah. So like there's a lot there that I really enjoyed, and I think flushing out more of that probably meant having to make some cuts in other aspects of the film, which I don't agree with making those cuts. But do feel like ultimately, as a piece of cinema, it does lead to creating a well-rounded enough story, taking it out of the scope of the universe that exists around it, because we don't judge Beauty and the Beast based on Belle's Christmas Adventure or whatever the hell that was called, and looking at this as just a standalone film that is not as much a remake, but maybe more of a reboot of Lilo and Stitch as a franchise.
See,
and
I
where it's going to take it here, I don't mind most of the changes. There is one that I was not really a fan of, and another one that felt more due to budget reasons as to why or I guess a couple.
There's three.
One of
there's
them's kind of
major
related.
changes for me,
I'm
two that
trying
are,
not to spoil this movie.
There's
It's
three
hard
major
to do
changes
that.
for me in this movie, two that are very hand in hand, that are what I genuinely think ruins this film.
Could we just wave
So
the
I
flag
think
now?
we're gonna go full
Spoilers.
because we're at a
Spoilers.
point. If you guys want to watch this, go watch this movie. If you don't, also totally understandable. I think we're going to be divided.
It's definitely
on
not
it.
something. It's not something you need to see in theaters. I told this to my sister, who is the Stitch fanatic. Not necessarily a theater going experience. It's nice to see on the big screen, but obviously, I think it translates well enough to home viewing that you don't need to rush out to see this one. I think it's going to get the spin-offs and sequels and Disney Plus shorts and all the things it's going to get because it made a butt ton of money so far.
I'm very curious to see what they do next. I really don't know if they will. Just with you see all of these interviews with the creative team for this, and they do not like this movie. The big one I saw was the art director being like, "Yeah, we tried to get Blakely in drag, and they just wouldn't handle it." And
I'm not a fan of that change. I do
that change.
align with you there.
I like what they did with it. I love that like Blakely is just a gay man. Like I love
Billy Magnuson. Billy Magnuson in this role is phenomenal. He's one of the highlights of the film for me. Both the live action and the animated voiceover that he does for this character is really, really spot on. You know that he is playing it the way the character was meant to be played, which I cannot say the same of Zach Galifianakis.
Galifianakis is the one
Jumba.
casting in here that I hated. Like he's just.
I'm not gonna say I hated it. I just didn't like.
It's not Jumba.
I wasn't a fan of how it deviated from the original character. But I understand with the geopolitical climate that we're in, that casting a Russian villain in this film might not have gone over well with the overlords.
I don't even mind that. It's just like, for me, Galifianakis' voice is just too high for this character. Like
It doesn't have that gravitas, that menacing.
Especially for the change they make. Like Jumba is such a great character in the original because he is not all evil. And we see that. And they kind of twist that here where it's like, no, Jumba is going to be the main villain of this.
Yeah. Which is a deviation from the original story, which
is one of my...
In the scope...
that's one of my big changes.
Again, I don't hate it. That was the change. That was one of the major changes I didn't like, was the fact that Jumba is the villain and they didn't include Agent... What's his face? Gantu, yes, thank you. As the main antagonist of the film.
So I didn't even
because he was in the original.
Gantu is one of those characters where it's like, I love Gantu. When he initially was like, okay, we're not going to make him the main antagonist of this, I was like, okay, that's fine, so long as we still get the redemption arc for Jumba. Because a lot of that of Jumba's redemption arc in the original is fueled by Gantu. Yeah. So I was excited to see, okay, how are you going to do that? Only to find when we sat down to watch this movie, there is no redemption arc. He's just bad.
And I think from a filmmaker perspective, setting up this film to have a villain that is thwarted, that isn't... It's easier in animation to say halfway through, okay, we're sending somebody else to be the bad guy, and you can suspend disbelief and jump around. But with a character like Gantu, just dropping it into this movie at a point where in the film probably would have been about 2/3 of the way through. So to make that shift from Jumba to Gantu, it might have been a little jarring for audiences, and I understand why that change was made. And I do still think if they do more in this retelling of the Lilo and Stitch story, that you can still send Jumba back to Earth. You can still force him into community service and have him redeemed that way. Like there's still ways to get the character to the guy that he is in the...
But I mean, alien, at the same point, what we're saying, right, we're praying out, like, we can't judge this based off of the entirety of the franchise. That hasn't happened. Future stuff for this, I am never going to take into account on this one. because
No, well, I
it
mean,
just hasn't. It's not happened in this
right.
this core of this movie. Jumba is evil and never changes, which is
Yeah.
antithetical to what that character originally was.
I also while I agree with that, I do think that adding more characters to this and sending more aliens to Earth does make it a little less believable in live action versus animation.
I mean, I'm assuming the reason they didn't do it was budget.
Well, and that was one of my other major complaints is we don't get enough Stitch in this movie.
We don't get enough of any of the aliens, and I understand why. The CG is expensive. Like, that is why we had
It looks
this whole,
really good when it's there.
That's why they had this whole cloaking thing, right, for Pleakley and Jumba, and being able to just use those actors for those moments. And it's like, okay, that I understand that from like a logistical standpoint of that. But yeah, we didn't get nearly enough Stitch in Lilo and Stitch.
Which is unfortunate, but
There
I
are
do think
entire
Maya...
like beautiful scenes of the original movie, right, where it's like after we have the hammock scene, and then you get that great moment between Jumba and Stitch afterwards in the original, and that's just not there in this one. He goes back.
I think
to
that's
the
part of what
kennel.
they're telling with the character, right? Because Jumba is not going to be redeemed, which is that is part of his redemption.
Well, he's not
right?
redeeming him in that scene. In that scene in the original, he is absolutely manipulating Stitch.
Well, yeah.
And then Gantu steps in and everything changes. Like,
yeah.
For me, it's just it's the domino effect of like kind of changing these major things. Not to mention the ending with Nani, like, which we'll get to because that is an entire thing on its own. Like,
before we get to that, I do want to suggest something.
There's a bird attacking the dog. I need help.
Okay, I'll
go
be
deal.
right back.
Go deal. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick pause, but we will be right back. No time is going to be changing for you, although I am now worried about Mitch's dog. We will be back in just a moment. And we're back. Mitch, is your dog okay?
Dog's fine. I do want to run something by you that I know you're not going to like, but I think it'll spark fun conversation. So we know we're getting a more we're theorizing that going forward, Tom Holland's Spider-Man will be a little more grounded, a little more down to earth, right? And if we need to introduce some mentor characters for this version of Spider-Man, a good story to tell is Dr. Otto Octavius. So my question for you is, after seeing this, is it just me or would Galifianakis make a pretty good Otto Octavius?
I think he's too goofy.
But Otto can be goofy, and then you see that turn, right? We got the same with Alfred Molina's Otto in Spider-Man 2.
Can Zach Galifianakis do serious? I don't think I've ever seen him in a serious role.
That's a good question. I feel like I have, but I'm trying to think of what it was. Just gotta find his
I do like how he played this though, of just constant annoyance. I do think.
I mean, he plays the Joker in Lego Batman.
That is not a serious role.
He plays himself in Only Murders in the Building.
You're not helping your case.
I don't see anything too serious, but again, I don't think Spider-Man is serious, right?
Well, yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean,
he was semi-serious in Birdman, wasn't he?
I don't remember him in Birdman.
Yeah, neither do I.
The thing for
for
Doc Ock, I think with Spidey, like you need an actor who can do both, especially after Alfred Molina is like the pivotal version of that character. But I'm gonna bring this back to Lilo and Stitch because I want to
do that.
More. I do think you have this cascading effect, this dominoes, like I said, where by removing Gantu and making Jumba the villain, you kind of change the entire third act of this movie. Like the kind of one of the beautiful things about the original is that the third act is this group of people that is eventually going to become this family, become this Ohana, forced to work together to save Lilo. And it's just not there here for me. They all run off to find her. And, we have something very similar to that in the original. I do like how they used Cobra Bubbles in that for this. And I actually really like the changes they made to Cobra just in general. I think that was a
What
very good change.
One thing I don't love with Cobra is it would have been way cooler to reveal in the third act that he's a CIA operative as opposed to as soon as he's introduced he's CIA.
See,
Like I
so the
understand it's a
reason-
kids film and you're trying to teach kids that this is government guy and government guy is going to do sneaky government things, but you don't have to be so blatant about it.
I do like that it was him having to decide whether to, be on his role as the CIA guy or help this family. I did like that we got that and we knew that as he was going through those emotions. Honestly, it's funny that the CIA is like the least of my issues with this movie.
It stands out to me because I don't think I had as many issues with the creative decisions made as you did.
Most of my issues follow, honestly, with Nani's decision and with how they handle the social worker aspect of everything and whatnot. Of Nani giving up Lilo, it absolutely should never have happened. And it is the decision that baffles me the most in this.
The thing is, again, something that I wanted to talk about as well is, telling this story in 2002 is very different from telling this story in 2025. It is easier in animation to get away with this young adult is taking care of her younger sister because their parents have died. In this, you get the emotional weight. The parents are not there far more than the original film, if I'm to be honest. And the fact that you've cast a teenager, or you are portraying Nani as a real life teenager that does not look as mature, I would say, as the Nani in animation, makes it a little harder to suspend disbelief that this girl's got her act together and can be responsible for Lilo. So I do think with how young they skewed for both the leads, I do think it probably does feel more lived in that at the end of the film, she's not deemed responsible enough. And we'll get to the point, I think, through whatever other stories are going to tell here, if they do, where Nani is responsible enough and has gotten her act together and has gone to school, got her degree.
I have the thoughts of what she could do going forward, but I think that's mostly coping for me. Where I see this and I'm like, yeah, I get it. She does seem younger in this, but there is the power of that original, right? Of the this found family coming together and them relying on each other. Nani and Lilo relying on each other as sisters to share that responsibility, despite how young they both are. And I think for me, playing with that, it just not only saying we're still Ohana, even though I'm giving you up, and moving off of the islands to go study something entirely different, which is a whole loaded thing even on its own to say the moral of the story is that you're giving up your sister and leaving your home. That is ultimately what this comes down to. For me, it ruins the found family, the beauty of that found family storyline in the original that they've started to set up here with, Pleakley joining them, Bubbles joining them now, and having David and Tutu, thank you. Having that all together, I just don't like how they do it.
See, I do disagree. I think introducing the original character of Tutu was a really smart decision because ultimately at the end of the film, the characters grow here in a different way from the way they grow in the film, and in that this found family is a bunch of teenagers and aliens, to there is a maternal figure here in Tutu. There is ways for them to tell this story and to grow this story with the found family aspect of we can be apart and still be family, because that is ultimately the world that we're living in today. Seeing Zoom pop up in this film at the end, and also, alien portal technology that was introduced very early that allows them to still be together while they're apart, does help me, I guess, cope a little better with the decisions that were made in the final story that was told.
I just feel like they're cop-outs. And maybe this is very much a personal thing for me, but Nani leaving to follow a completely separate path. We have multiple different things in this movie where we're like, oh yeah, Nani loved this, but now she can't do it anymore. We see that with surfing. And I thought that was the path that they were going to go down, right? Where she was going to continue to support Lilo, but go back to being this amazing surfer, this professional level of that. But no, like
Okay.
leaving for
For that piece, like, do you still think that Child Protective Services would leave Lilo in her custody if her way of providing for Lilo was, I'm going to go and become a professional surfer?
Homie, with all due respect, this is a movie about aliens as well.
No, I know, but it's grounded in reality. We have CPS.
It's
We
not.
have medical insurance issues, and the way the medical insurance is dealt with in the United States. We like there are these elements here that weren't in the original film, because the original film was made in 2002 as an animated film with a bunch of characters that
Look,
meet
there is a
aliens.
realism to it, yes, but also it almost feels like a purposeful misinterpretation of how good social services actually is.
That is true. It is almost
like
too
I saw
convenient.
this great TikTok, and I wish I could bring it up, like, but I just don't have that ability at the moment. Of talking how, like, in the same way that we will often talk about how, like, Marvel is definitively just propaganda for the U.S. military, this is absolutely propaganda for U.S. social services.
But
like,
also a pretty good commentary on the U.S. healthcare system, which I feel like is an easier shot to take.
I mean, I think they're equally easy to. I would say that they're both easy to take. Yeah, for me, it's just the whole idea of Nani ultimately making a selfish decision at the end.
But it isn't Nani making that decision either, right?
It absolutely is Nani making that decision.
Lilo's the one who tells her to go.
It is absolutely still Nani making that decision.
It is, but Lilo also has the maturity to know that her, like, Nani's whole life can't be like, she can't give up the dream that she had and the dream that their parents had for her because of this thing that has happened to them. They have found family. They have the support system they need for her to still pursue her dreams, and I think that's really nice.
See, I think
it's convenient, of course, but it's nice.
I still think the sentiment is nice. I still think she shouldn't be making the decision. I still don't think that's the path they should have gone down, especially considering, like, first off, yeah, she's going to UCSD, which is kind of hilarious because there's a significantly better marine biology program at University of Hawaii.
That's what I was just going to say, is they could have just sent her to the University of Hawaii, and then
I really thought
they all just could have moved to Honolulu and we're good. And Stitch is going to, like, that's how you can tell news stories with Stitch. If he's in a big city, is this going to go to hell? Probably. And in what fun and mysterious ways?
There's a significantly better version of this story where it's like, no, she does go to school, but she goes to school, like, remote, or she goes to school at University of Hawaii. Like, there were so many other ways to do this that were just
University of Hawaii. They still have to build in, okay, we're all moving to Honolulu. Like, it doesn't seem realistic that this entire found family drops everything to implant 2 aliens in the most populated city in the islands.
At the same time, they have
which I believe is where the University of Hawaii is, right? I'm not crazy.
I believe it's in Honolulu. I think you're right on that. But also, they have this portal gun, which immediately means they don't have to. Like, it's just it's such a baffling decision to me for them to completely change that ending with that.
I don't think it's egregious. I don't feel like it's as egregious, especially since they have some of this alien tech. But obviously, I think we agree to disagree on this point.
Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about another one that I think is a change for me that is significantly more minor, but was one that just irked me, which was how they bring up the whole line of my family is broken but still good. Mm-hmm. That scene still absolutely hits for me. I'm very torn on how we come to it, where it's like, yeah, part of me likes that, that, like, Stitch kind of comes to this conclusion on his own. But there was the other part of me that really loved it. It was like, no, Lilo taught him this and taught him that things can be broken but still good.
Well, I think what this scene does for me is it makes the hammock scene later feel that much more lived in, that much more realistic, as opposed to the jump up manipulation we got in the original animated film, which you talked about earlier. We get this really touching moment between sisters and Stitch coming to the realization on his own that he is a problem, and in order to save his Ohana, needs to leave. And I think that's, again, this is a theme that they get back to over and over again, which ultimately leads to Nani making a very similar decision at the end of the film. But I really love that at that point, Stitch has redeemed himself through his relationship with Lilo. And we also get a little later when Jumba's destroying the house of Lilo, like when he tries, again, we still get a lot of this really fun Jumba manipulation that we saw in the original film, or we get that scene of like he was using you as a shield. He was using you to keep me away from you, keep me away. And she has this realization. It's a really heartbreaking moment. Like this film still has those moments that tug on your heartstrings, which is why I can't just dismiss it. I think in some of the decisions they made that are so drastically different from the original film.
That's why I think for me, like my ultimate opinion on this movie is that it is a mixed bag. Because I do think it does some things very well. I think that those moments are still emotional. It's these changes for like, and even aside for like the emotional moments, like there's some very, very good things in this movie. Like, again, I think the casting is primarily great. The music in this movie is fantastic. The way they'll go back to, Aloha Away or to Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride, Like, the way that they will bring these things up, I think, is very...
Or Elvis. I'm glad they kept that theming, even though at this point, like, Elvis for Lilo would have been, at the time of the original film, what, like 40 years? And now we're looking at 60?
Interesting point. The person who did the music for this, Dan Romer, also did the music recently for Luca, which is another movie that we praised the soundtrack for. And a bunch of other stuff as well. He also helped compose Death of a Unicorn, but that movie kind of sucked.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Like, I think just for me, ultimately, it's where this movie comes down for me, is it just tries to do certain things and just misses. But the other things that it does emulate well are done very well. There's not a bad looking moment in this entire film.
Beautifully shot, beautifully animated. The cinematography is on point. The one scene I love going back to is the scene in the truck. Like that first scene where they're trying to get Stitch settled. He ejects the CD, throws it in a car. Car drives off the road. Just the cuts and the way it's edited.
I will say for a second, I thought that
so
car
fun.
was a Cobra.
That would have been funny.
I was like, I wish they had done that because that would have just been hilarious. But yeah, the mayhem aspect of Stitch, they nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, I do like that him and Lilo has this moment, right, of, oh, you like to get into trouble, let's get into trouble. And I like that they showed her, like, like they had the moment of her at the beginning, her in the hot tub at the hotel. And she's like, resort. I'm here for the convention.
Yeah, like there's some really, like, the way it's written, the way that it's presented, the way that there were edits and reshoots and ADR, but I think it all works to making for a more lived-in story. There are some times where there's too much ADR, and that's fine, but that's something that my ear picks up that I know most general audiences probably aren't going to scoff at. But ultimately, like, I really love the goofy nature of David and Nani's relationship here. I think it does a great job of translating what they had in animation to here. It doesn't get into an overly complicated relationship in the way that I think the original and all the spin-offs and stuff did, but I don't think it needed to, especially with the end of this film being Lilo is living with him and his mother or grandmother. Or I don't know.
She's still living in the same house. She's still in her house.
Well, once they rebuild it, yeah.
Well, I mean, they do the same end credits thing that the original does. The end credits is them building the house.
And we get the Elvis shot. We get Stitch Elvis, which is fun.
Kind of wish
we do not get Stitch in bra hat, but
we do though. We do.
It's in the hand-drawn animated credits, yeah.
Couple other, like, again, more little things. Kind of was expecting for us to see more of the bullies. Like, I was surprised that Myrtle played such a small role in this movie.
I don't mind that because I didn't want them to like I think that is an entirely other film that they could have told where there is more bullying and there's more like it's
that. Well, it's more of that was the change I expected to see, was for them to go more down that route, and they just didn't.
Although she still yeets her off that stage, which was fun.
Beautiful. It's great. I love it. I mentioned the casting, but again, I do want to shout out Amy Hill's casting as Tutu.
She's phenomenal.
She's
Another voice actor brought back from the original animated film.
like most of the adults in this movie are brought back, like her being Mrs. Hasegawa, who is the one to eventually give Nani a job. I do think is the one that makes sense there. And then also Tia Carrere, who plays the social worker, is the original voice of Nani.
I thought she was great. I do think that adds a lot of gravity to the situation, which we don't really get from Cobra in the original film, because it is just, oh, who's this tall, menacing person that is very clearly not a social worker who says he's a social worker.
He was a social worker, though, in the original, and that's why it's hilarious.
I thought he was CIA.
He was ex-CIA.
Oh, right. It's been a while since I watched the original. I should probably go watch the original.
I rewatched the original before going and seeing this.
See, I didn't want to, because I didn't want to do a lot of the comparison drawing between this and that.
See, I think it was inevitable regardless of having watched it. And especially with the changes they made, right? Like, it's hard not to compare the changes they made to the original. Like you said, though, I'm interested to see if they do more.
I do think with how well this film has done, it doesn't matter what creatives they bring in, whether it's a series of Stitch shorts on Disney Plus, a show, other films in this universe, it's inevitable. Like, it's gonna happen. They're gonna throw too much money at this, because that's what Disney does, because this thing made so much money, and because it made everyone forget that Snow White also came out this year.
Yeah, I think there was an interview with Dean Fleischer Camp and Jonathan Eyrick, the producer on the film, about if they were going to make more, and they said that it very much depended on audience reception, less than money. And I think that is the interesting one there, right? Where it's like, you can tell a lot more. Stitch has a glitch is great.
Yeah. Leroy and Stitch is fun. The whole Stitch series is
honestly
really,
I just want
really
them to
good.
remake Stitch the movie, because that is the beginning of the series, and like that's the one that I love the most. Honestly, though, I would be very happy if they never made another live action remake again.
I don't think they're going to stop, because, and to speak to your point about whether or not the audience has received this well enough, it is currently at a 94% from a verified audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
Hey, we've said many times so that you can't fully trust Rotten Tomatoes. Audience.
Well, that's why I was looking at the verified numbers and not the all numbers, because then you look at something like IMDb in a very similar open, anyone can really put anything they want. I think it's like a 7-ish. See, I'm here.
It's
I'm
an
scrolling.
interesting one
7,
where I'm sure it's Disney, right? I'm sure they will try to find a way to make more. It's Stitch.
I think after what this does at the box office and how well it will do when it comes to Disney Plus, it is inevitable. You're not going to get Figment. You're going to get more Stitch. I'm sorry to tell you, Griffin.
I mean, Figment is completely separate in every way, shape.
I'm only saying it because he's in your background.
Yeah, he always is. He's there twice.
The comic book. Oh yeah, I never actually noticed the other one. Like, the comic book doesn't count, and then I look to the right.
What's funny is, there's the two. There's the comic book, and then there's also the Golden Kids book.
Those don't count.
Yeah.
You can't tell it's Figment. There's only 2 Figments you can tell back there. I just know the comics back there because it's you.
Is he the? I think I moved that actually.
The comic?
Yeah, I have multiple bookshelves.
Well, no, I know. I just figured that was going to be one of the books in your office.
There is no rhyme or reason to where things go in my apartment.
Look, there's going to be more of this. It is inevitable, the same way Thanos was. So we just got to be here, and hopefully they take some of the feedback that you're giving them here, listen to it very intently, and apply some of this to whatever comes next.
Disney, be better. Give us original.
We're going to get more live action. What's the next live action thing you think Disney's going to do? Because they seem to be teetering back and forth between something. I
genuinely don't know. I do
good
not think,
and bad.
Well, like, because they don't have any other live action stuff announced, right?
I mean, they do, but the one that we know is going to come next is not something either of us is looking forward to.
I mean, like, I know
the next live action film is Moana.
Sorry, but yeah, because there's a bunch of rumors, right, of ideas that they were throwing around, right? Like they mentioned Hunchback of Notre Dame. They've mentioned Tangled. Um, they recently reacquired the rights to the Black Cauldron. But
That doesn't seem like that's up their alley right now.
ultimately, I do not see them making another live action remake. Not after how not after how Snow White did. Like I think that a lot of the reason that this movie did well is because it's Lilo and Stitch, and I think Disney is not blind to that fact.
Well, I do think that Moana is going to come out and do also very good numbers because there was a lot of, that's going to be a bigger film than this because Moana was a bigger film than the original Lilo and Stitch, even with the way that Stitch has become a cultural icon. I do still think we will get that live action Hercules announced as the next thing, and I don't think it's going to do well. It might have done well 10 years ago with Zac Efron and Ariana Grande, but it probably won't in 2032 or whenever it comes out with whoever they put in it.
Yeah, I can't see them doing more after how Snow White did so poorly, and I honestly think that the next quote unquote live action remake announcement, if it exists, is the next Lilo and Stitch live action remake.
Like a sequel to it?
Mm-hmm.
Big Hero 6, I think, could be done.
If they live action remake Big Hero 6, that's when I riot.
I think it could be good. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, we're pulling far too recent if they're starting to do that.
They're doing Moana.
Yeah, it's already too recent. Big Hero.
Well, they just need to do it while Dwayne Johnson still has muscles.
They're only doing that because of Dwayne Johnson.
Oh yeah, he's co-financing the film, I believe.
Yeah, like The Rock ruins everything.
I mean, Fast franchise, yeah.
DCEU.
He didn't ruin the original one. I really enjoyed the
DCEU.
I mean, he was
Tell me I'm wrong.
what was the thing? The balance of power shifted, and it did. It shifted away from banking those movies anymore.
It did. It was kind of hilarious to me that like the last couple films of that franchise were like Shazam and Black Adam.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't think they're gonna do Tangled, because you don't really want to bring back up your ties with Zach Levi at this point with how off the rails he's gone.
It's just bad.
Oh yeah, so $7 is co-producing the Moana live action remake, which I figured as much.
Surprising. Yeah,
oh my god, but they're getting the actor that played Doggy Kruger from Power Rangers SPD to play Chief Tua. I'm back in, Griffin. I'm back in. Oh, we're gonna get to do a Power Rangers show when that comes to Disney Plus. You're gonna have to talk about Power Rangers with me. It's gonna be so good.
Why am I here? Yeah,
I don't really know at this point.
Looking ahead, right? Like I'm looking at their current slate, and I do not see where they would put in live action remakes. I guess they're working on a Bambi.
And they're gonna call that live action because they call the Lion King live action.
Looks like they're also potentially working on a live action remake of the Aristocats.
Why?
I'm not sure how this is going to work, but they're working on a Club 33 movie.
I mean, that'll work just as well as Tomorrowland did.
21 Laps Entertainment.
Remember Tomorrowland? Jungle Cruise? Those happened.
So 21 Laps Entertainment, founded by Sean Levy.
Okay, now I'm a little less... I mean, that just means it's going to star Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, probably. Another interesting one for them to do, and this isn't necessarily live action remake, but it looks like this is a co-production with Maximum Effort. Speaking of Ryan Reynolds,
I am looking forward to Disney's co-production with Point Great Pictures, the Seth Rogen studio.
We'll get to that.
Do you know what they're working on?
Yeah, that's Figment.
That is Figment.
Which doesn't have me excited. But no, but I'm getting
to
to
it's going to be good.
It looks like they might be doing a movie for the Society of Explorers and Adventurers.
Yeah, they've been kind of teasing that for a while, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's like even then, like all the stuff we're talking about here, it looks like they might be doing a third Maleficent film.
Which,
yeah, exactly.
Well, there's also talks of doing a sequel to Cruella.
Yeah, which honestly I would be really here for, because I love Cruella. We need to do an episode.
Oh, they're also talking about a sequel to Jungle Cruise, which I enjoyed that movie, but I don't know if I want more Dwayne Johnson.
Well, again, that is only happening because of Dwayne Johnson.
Well, yeah.
No, seriously, we need to do an episode on Cruella.
I told you today the one I want to do is The Princess Bride, because I think that's the perfect movie, and we should talk about why it's the perfect movie.
What's funny is I was literally referencing that in a meeting at work on Friday.
Inconceivable.
Hey, well, that's funny. That's the scene that I was referencing.
As you should. It's a great scene. One of the best scenes
folks,
in
we're going
film.
to wrap this episode up. Mitch, I'm going to guess your recommendation is to go see Lilo and Stitch.
Honestly, if you're a huge Stitch fan, sure. If you're not, you can wait for Disney Plus. I don't think it's something you have to rush out to see, especially if this was a movie that was on the bubble of like, if this doesn't get the numbers in theaters, it's not going to get any more. I would say I want to see more of the story they were telling with these characters and the way they end up at the end of this film. So yes, go see it. Granted, it's already made $1 billion. You probably don't have to. So if you want to wait. But I enjoyed my time with it.
Yeah, honestly, I would say this one's a skip for me. I just think the changes are too much. But make your own opinions. And please, let us know what your opinions are, either in the comments below or on social media at D+Us. We will see y'all in the next episode. But until then, be good to each other and have a magical day.